Hello and welcome to our presentation. The World Health Organization's 8 Steps of Wheelchair Provision. This webinar will present you an introduction to the World Health Organization's 8 Steps of Wheelchair Provision. We're talking about people who have mobility problems and therefore need an appropriate wheelchair. Overview. The webinar will explain A. What is an appropriate wheelchair? B. Why is it important to provide appropriate wheelchairs together with wheelchair services? C. What is the World Health Organization's 8 Steps of Wheelchair Provision? D. Why it's important to provide wheelchair mobility skills and maintenance training in order to maximize and facilitate health, well-being, independence and social inclusion of wheelchair users. First, let's look at the number of people globally who need a wheelchair. Who needs a wheelchair? The World Health Organization estimates that over 70 million people need a wheelchair, which is approximately 7% of the global population of people with disabilities. However, only 5 to 15% of these individuals have access to one. There is a need for urgent action to improve access to appropriate wheelchairs and wheelchair services for all people with mobility limitations. Disability rights are human rights. In fact, such demand for appropriate wheelchair provision is recognized by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, known as the CRPD, a comprehensive international human rights treaty that intends to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and freedoms under law, in addition to promoting respect for the inherent dignity of all people with disabilities. Since its adoption by the UN, the CRPD has drastically shifted the international perception of persons with disabilities from being thought of as objects of charity, medical treatment, and social protection to the present, when people with disabilities are thought of as subjects with rights who are active and equal members of society. One of the most important articles from this convention is Article 20, which emphasises that an appropriate wheelchair is the first step towards personal mobility. Article 20 also stipulates that all nations shall take effective measures to facilitate access of persons with disabilities to quality mobility equipment at an affordable price. Personal mobility. Personal mobility is the ability to move in a manner and at the time of one's choosing. The right to personal mobility is an important first step in remaining healthy, independent and productive. Specialists have given thought to this and concluded that only a well-functioning wheelchair provision system with well-trained personnel can guarantee the highest possible personal mobility. This, combined with an appropriate wheelchair, is the first step towards personal mobility. So what is an appropriate wheelchair? What is an appropriate wheelchair? There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all or a one-type-fits-all wheelchair. Each wheelchair user needs a wheelchair that meets their needs, suits their environment, and is safe and long-lasting. What is an appropriate wheelchair? An appropriate wheelchair is one that is fit for purpose. That is, it meets the user's needs. For instance, an active person will need an active type of wheelchair. It meets the user's environment. For instance, a person living in a rural area will need a wheelchair that has different characteristics than a person living in a city. It is the proper fit, size and support. For instance, it gives the necessary postural support. It is safe to use and durable, and it can be maintained and repaired locally. What is an appropriate wheelchair? The importance of proper fit. A wheelchair is like a pair of shoes. Just as shoes that are too small or too large are uncomfortable and hard to move in, the same applies to wheelchairs. If a wheelchair is too tight, it may create injuries. If a wheelchair is too large, it is harder for the user to move independently, and it may lead to postural deformities and uneven pressure distribution caused by an incorrect position of the user in the wheelchair. In fact, such improper fit is a very common occurrence. Individuals especially. What is an appropriate wheelchair? The need for postural support. An appropriately fitted wheelchair provides its user with the correct postural support. However, for some users, the basic adjustment of the backrest, cushion and footrests is insufficient for maintaining a correct position in their wheelchair. Let's look at two examples. On the left, we see Clara, who can sit upright without extra postural support, so she requires only a basic level service. On the right, we see Ashade, who is unable to sit upright without additional support. She requires access to an intermediate level service. Postural support is essential when recommending mobility equipment because it helps prevent medical deformities and other medical conditions. It helps the user to breathe and eat better. It helps prevent pressure sores, and it helps provide greater levels of function so that people with disabilities can be more independent. Why are cushions essential? An essential component of an appropriate wheelchair is the cushion. Every wheelchair user must use a cushion because it helps prevent common health risks such as pressure sores. For this reason, wheelchair service providers must stock a range of cushions for different needs. For example, any person at risk of developing a pressure sore needs a pressure relief cushion. Appropriate wheelchairs prevent potential risks. To conclude, to avoid significant health risks and social isolation, it is critical to provide appropriate wheelchairs fitted with the help of a trained professional. Providing an inappropriate wheelchair can result in life-threatening injuries, such as postural deformities and pressure sores, leading to increased medical expenses and even death. It can also lead to negative social effects, such as reduced social participation, increased physical and emotional burden to family members, reduced productivity and family income that can ultimately lower the well-being of the user and his or her family. What an appropriate wheelchair means to me. Let's look at a video that shows the perspective of wheelchair users talking about what an appropriate wheelchair means to them.
Am avut un scaun rulant total nepotrivit prima dată, nu m-a măsurat nimeni, am primit un scaun donație de la cineva și l-am folosit. M-am obișnuit cu el cam un an și jumătate până am ajuns la Motivation ca și beneficiar și am fost măsurat și mi s-a dat un scaun potrivit, un scaun rulant activ pe care am și învățat să-l folosesc. Am realizat chiar în aceea zi în care l-am primit că mi este mult mai ușor să ajung din punctul A în punctul B, că stau mult mai bine în el, că atunci mi s-au deschis un pic orizonturile și am învățat că pot să devin independent și că o să pot până la urmă să fac o grămadă de lucruri pe care nu îmi imaginam că pot să le fac.
Și tot începe cu o vizită, o evaluare a nevoilor pe care persoana le are, vizită în timpul căreia recomandăm și un scaun rulant potrivit, fiindcă ăsta e esența, de aici plecăm. După ce omul are un mijloc prin care să se deplaseze, poate să treacă la etapa următoare.
Noi îl așezăm pe un pat de kineto, unde urmează să fie făcută evaluarea, măsurătorile. Sunt anumite unghiuri pe care trebuie să le respecte. Este foarte important ca persoana în scaun să adopte o poziție cât mai corectă, ca să evite acele complicații medicale despre care vorbeam, respiratorii, deformarea ale coloanei.
Aici ia formă scaunul, îl personalizăm, îl facem strict pe măsurătorile făcute de tehnicieni și de kinetoterapeuți. Și noi, la rândul nostru, am avut nevoie de scaune care să fie conform cu fizicul nostru, cu necesitățile noastre.
Dacă înainte am avut un scaun nepotrivit, și apoi primește un scaun potrivit nevoilor lui, deja situația se schimbă și observă el prima reacție de wow.
Noi facem lucrul acesta pentru că suntem convinși de utilitatea lui, iar el face parte din calitatea serviciilor pe care omul le primește.
E foarte, foarte important, e esențial de fapt ca scaunul rulant să fie potrivit pentru abilitățile pe care persoana le are, pentru diagnosticul pe care le are, pentru zona în care trăiește și pentru scopul în care urmează să-l folosească.
Noi putem să demonstrăm că un scaun rulant corect aduce beneficii atât persoanei cât și sistemului.
Un scaun rulant potrivit înseamnă de fapt o șansă la viață pentru o persoană care are o dizabilitate locomotorie. Dacă nu ai scaun rulant, nu poți să ai viață de niciun fel. Îți oferă acces în primul rând la o viață independentă, fără a fi o oaie neagră a comunității care are nevoie să se folosească și de viața altcuiva pentru a o trăi pe a ei.
Why wheelchair provision? Wheelchair provision is more than just providing a wheelchair. It is an overall term for wheelchair design, production, supply, and the service provision system. Just as you would not expect someone to drive a car without having lessons, so it is with a wheelchair. To be an effective tool for mobility, a wheelchair should be provided to the user along with appropriate training on wheelchair mobility skills, pressure sore prevention, and wheelchair maintenance. All of this helps the wheelchair user to adapt to new challenges in terms of accessibility, self-care, and the prevention of secondary medical conditions. The World Health Organization's 8 steps of wheelchair provision. The World Health Organization's 8 steps of wheelchair provision consist of the following. Number 1, referral and appointment. Number 2, assessment. Number 3, prescription. Number 4, funding and ordering. Number 5, product or wheelchair preparation. Number 6, fitting. Number 7, user training. And number 8, maintenance, repairs and follow-up. According to the World Health Organization guidelines for wheelchair provision, this process should be conducted by a team that includes at least one professional trained in the World Health Organization 8 steps, who is a physiotherapist, an occupational therapist, a wheelchair mobility skills trainer, and a wheelchair technician. The wheelchair user and his or her family members or caregiver should be involved in the decision-making process at each step. Appropriate wheelchair provision video. Let's look at a video presentation that talks about appropriate wheelchair provision.
Una din principalele probleme ale oamenilor cu dizabilități, în particular cei care folosesc scaune rulante în România, este accesul la produse adaptate nevoilor lor și de asemenea accesul la serviciile care ar trebui să însoțească produsul, scaunul rulant. Mă refer aici la specialiști care să știe să prescrie corect un scaun rulant pe baza evaluărilor utilizatorului și ulterior instruire a utilizatorului de către oameni cu aceleași probleme care știu ce înseamnă să duci o viață normală zi de zi într-un scaun rulant. Fiecare etapă a acestui proces, proiectat, să zicem, de Organizația Mondială a Sănătății, implementat de noi în România și de alți parteneri în alte țări, are în centru persoana cu dizabilități, utilizatorul de scaun rulant.
Pornim de la lucruri simple, sau care par simple, par banale, de la cum să spui pantofii sau cum să te îmbraci atunci când ești într-un scaun rulant, și ajunge până la discuții despre integrarea în muncă, despre menținerea unui loc de muncă, schimbarea unui loc de muncă, dobândirea unui permis auto și adaptarea unei mașini, tot ce conduce practic la o viață independentă.
Prima etapă ar fi aprecierea distanței, cum să folosească scaunul, cum să dea la rost corect, cum să stea în el corect, după care îl învățăm cum să urce o rampă corectă, cum să o coboare corect, rampă abruptă, rampă lină, statul pe două roți unde întâmpinăm pe stradă o groapă, o bordură care necesită să stăm pe două roți, să o coborăm mult mai ușor.
Mă bucură, mă face să aștept, da, din ce în ce să vină alte persoane și alte persoane, să știu că pleacă cu ceva de aici care să-i ajute nu o zi, nu o lună, ci toată viața.
Este satisfacția transformării unor vieți. Poate că este prea mult spus, dar în esență cam asta este. Adică când știi că ai întâlnit pe cineva care 7 ani n-a ieșit din casă și după ce s-a întâlnit cu echipa ta și a dorit să vină la un curs de calculatoare la început și peste alți 7 ani s-a căsătorit, terminase o facultate și a luat carnet și conducea o mașină și a mai și adoptat un copil, e o satisfacție.
Step 1. Referral and Appointment. Now let's look at each of the World Health Organization's 8 steps of wheelchair provision, starting with Step 1. Referral and Appointment. People who require a wheelchair can be referred to specialized wheelchair services that are provided by trained personnel via community, government, and non-government organizations. Who can refer someone to wheelchair services? It could be doctors, nurses, health clinics, and rehabilitation centres, or a disabled persons organisation, or a non-governmental organisation, or a village, council, religious leader, or perhaps other wheelchair users. Anyone can take the initiative and refer a person from their community. Step 1. Referral and Appointment. Once a referral is received, a wheelchair service provider contacts the individual to set an appointment time for an assessment. This can be done via telephone, email, home visit, or via the party that referred the individual. Step 2. Assessment. The second step is assessment. Assessment is carried out in 2 parts. Stage 1. An interview assessment that establishes the user's physical condition, lifestyle and environment, and details about their existing wheelchair, if any. This interview can include discussion with the individual and their family. Stage 2. A physical assessment, where the wheelchair user's body measurements are taken to facilitate the accurate prescription of the wheelchair. For example, seat width, seat depth, calf length, and back height. The information is gathered in order to select the most appropriate wheelchair available for the user, to determine the functions that the wheelchair will have in the user's life, and to determine what training the wheelchair user and/or the family requires. Assessment is a complex step that identifies the most appropriate wheelchair for the user and also establishes their training needs and referrals to other specialized professionals. Step 3. Prescription. Prescription means selecting the best match possible between the wheelchairs available and the needs of the user. This also includes identifying the training needs and educating the user and his or her family about the use and maintenance of the wheelchair. This selection is done in collaboration with the user and his or her family members or caregiver and considers the following factors: the type of wheelchair, model, size, cushion and wheelchair parts, and any special modifications needed for each individual. Decisions in terms of wheelchair provision and other types of interventions are made by a team trained in the World Health Organization Wheelchair Provision Guidelines. Step 4. Funding and ordering. When the wheelchair has been prescribed, the cost of the recommended product needs to be accurately estimated. It is essential to identify a source of funding for the wheelchair. There are different funding mechanisms: out-of-pocket payment, a subsidy from the government, a subsidy or a donation from a non-governmental organisation or donor agency or individual, or a payment made by an insurance company. When the funding source has been identified, a specific wheelchair is ordered. Step 5. Product preparation. At this step, trained wheelchair technicians assemble the wheelchair and prepare it ahead of the fitting session, according to the user's prescription, in addition to checking the wheelchair to make sure that it is safe to use and all parts are working correctly. The range and options for adjustment vary, depending on the type of wheelchair. Step 6. Fitting. At this step, the user attends a fitting session with the provider for a final fitting to ensure that A. the wheelchair is the correct size and all the necessary adjustments have been made to ensure an appropriate fit, that B. the postural support elements enable the user to sit in the most upright position that is comfortable, balanced and functional, and that C. if a pressure relief cushion has been prescribed, it is effective. Step 7. User training. This is the moment when the user learns how to operate their new mobility device. This step refers to training on wheelchair mobility skills, maintenance, and pressure sore prevention. Its purpose is to prepare the user to participate actively in their community. During the user training, the person learns techniques to help with the following: how to handle the wheelchair, how to prevent pressure sores, how to get in and out of the chair, wheelchair mobility skills, how to care for the wheelchair and the cushion, and what to do if they experience a problem. Step 7. User training. Wheelchair mobility skills and pressure sore prevention are two important components of user training. The training can be enhanced and customized according to the individual's needs. A wheelchair trainer provides information on how to perform activities of daily living to enable the greatest level of independence while maintaining skin integrity. This training includes the topics listed in the previous slide, as well as other important themes, such as counselling on the prevention of secondary medical complications, bladder and bowel management, accessibility, and the rights of people with disabilities. Training can be provided by a staff member of the provision team or a wheelchair mobility skills trainer who may also be a wheelchair user themselves and be able to share information based on their own personal experiences in order to guide the trainee during the process of moving from disability to ability. Step 8. Maintenance, repairs, and follow-up. The user should perform regular checks and maintenance, which can save repair costs and prevent injuries. Wheelchair users can do a lot at home to look after their wheelchair and to maintain it in good condition. They should clean the wheelchair and cushion, oil moving parts, pump up the tyres, tighten nuts and bolts, and tighten spokes. Wheelchair personnel should explain to wheelchair users what to do if their wheelchair needs repairs. Step 8. Maintenance, repairs, and follow-up. Follow-up is most important for children, users at risk of developing a pressure sore, users who have a progressive condition, and users who have had difficulty with some element of wheelchair training. If the wheelchair no longer meets the needs of the user, the process should start again from step 1, referral and appointment. This may be the situation when users have become more active and require a different type of equipment or postural support, or situations where the wheelchair is damaged or where the measurements of the user have changed, perhaps due to aging and weight fluctuations. Types of wheelchair service provision models. There are various models of wheelchair service provision based on the local context and available resources. Examples include A. A centre-based service that has facilities dedicated to wheelchair service delivery, an area focused on mobility skills, and a full wheelchair repair and maintenance department. It may also include a team of trained personnel working full-time in wheelchair service delivery. B. An integrated service that consists of most centre-based services. This means that the wheelchair service is combined with activities of another service. For example, wheelchair service delivery could be integrated with a prosthetics and orthotics service, a physiotherapy department, or a health clinic. Service personnel may have dedicated days for wheelchair service delivery and dedicated days for other services within the hospital or organisation. C. An outreach wheelchair service, where the facilities may be temporary. A room or building is provided by a partner organisation, or home visits are carried out. Some of the service steps are also partly carried out by centre-based service personnel. A small stock of wheelchairs may be stored at the partner organisation. Training will be required to increase the capacity of the partner organisation. It may be necessary to identify repair and maintenance service facilities such as welding, woodwork, and upholstery in the community. D. A mobile service, where assembled or unassembled wheelchairs, along with necessary tools and equipment, are transported by vehicle. Service personnel travel with a vehicle. A limited repair and maintenance service is possible. The mobile service may use community buildings or take everything they need to provide a wheelchair service at the community level. Not all of the 8 steps in wheelchair service provision need to be carried out by the same organisation. Collaboration between a network of organisations can help increase the efficiency of services and increase user access to the full 8 steps. Wheelchair provision summary. In conclusion, the 8 wheelchair provision steps are: Number 1, referral and appointment. Number 2, assessment. Number 3, prescription. Number 4, funding and ordering. Number 5, product or wheelchair preparation. Number 6, fitting. Number 7, user training. And number 8, maintenance, repairs, and follow-up. This model demonstrates the 8-step process conducted in a centre-based service type, with referral and follow-up carried out via community partnerships. It also demonstrates the importance of enhanced wheelchair mobility skills training. There are different ways of delivering wheelchair services through different service provision models, as shown by the previous slide. Regardless, all users will benefit if the delivery type follows the 8 steps. For example, steps 1 and 8 can be done either by the wheelchair service provider or by the community through various local representatives, such as social workers, community health workers, village, council and religious leaders, and wheelchair users themselves. Steps 2 to 7 require a team of wheelchair service personnel trained in the World Health Organization guidelines for wheelchair provision. There may be situations where the service is community-based. The division between centre-based service activities and community-based service activities will vary according to the local context. Resources and next steps. The guidelines on the provision of manual wheelchairs in less resourced settings, created by the World Health Organization, shows how to develop the wheelchair service provision system. The World Health Organization has also recently released 3 complementary wheelchair service training packages to provide comprehensive training for clinical staff, managers, and stakeholders. Wheelchair service providers should meet the World Health Organization standards for wheelchair provision. It's important that wheelchair service personnel participate in specialized training based on the World Health Organization Wheelchair Service Training Package curricula, and ideally to pass the International Society of Wheelchair Professionals examinations. This certifies standard knowledge and skills for providing appropriate wheelchair services to clients. Go to the links on the screen for more information. Key point summary. It's time to wrap up the presentation. There are 5 key things to remember. Number 1. It's important to create a sense of urgency about the need for appropriate wheelchair products and services according to the World Health Organization guidelines. Number 2. All people have a right to personal mobility, and an appropriate wheelchair is the first step towards that. Number 3. Each wheelchair user needs an appropriate wheelchair together with a proper cushion that meets their needs, suits their environment, and is safe and durable. Number 4. User training includes wheelchair mobility skills, wheelchair maintenance, and pressure sore prevention. All are meant to help wheelchair users to actively participate in their communities and be ready to overcome challenges in accessibility, social acceptance, self-care, and the prevention of secondary medical conditions. And number 5. All wheelchair services must follow the World Health Organization's 8 steps of wheelchair provision. This must be delivered only by trained personnel according to Wheelchair Service Training Package curricula. Thank you for your time and attention.